Good afternoon. Please. Good afternoon. Yes, okay, now I know we're all together. Welcome to the first ever North Texas Faith Votes events. Thank you. I am Reverend Amy Moore. I am the moderator of the Social Justice Task Force of Grace Presbytery, and I am the parish associate here at North Park Presbyterian Church for Spirituality and Justice. We want you to feel welcome here, and we are excited to have so many of you here present, as well as folks that have joined us and are joining us online. This is, as we said, and a reminder, a nonpartisan event. There will be no campaign information, no speeches, but we can look forward to hearing how all our votes matter and how to build relationships with our representatives and how the Dallas County voting system works. I think we have a great agenda for y'all. This is also a multi-faith event. And that said, I would like to acknowledge and recognize our siblings of faith that are represented here. And that is Baptist, Church of God, Disciples of Christ, Episcopal, Islam, Jewish, Methodist, non-denominational, non-affiliated, Presbyterian, Unitarian Universalist, and United Church of Christ. I find that so excited, and welcome one and all for our work together for the common good. Details, of course. I think everyone has already found the snack and coffee water stations, but also if you need to use the restrooms when you exit the sanctuary, take a right toward the glass doors, but before you leave the building, take a left into the hallway. And the restrooms are right there. There's also a drinking fountain there. About 2:45, we will have a restroom and snack break and time for some networking. But in the snacks, I would like to mention our courtesy of the gracious hospitality of Faith Texas Impact. So make yourselves at home. We want you to feel welcome here. And now I would like to turn it over to Reverend Angela Williams.
Good morning, everybody. We are just so delighted that you are here today. You are all that and a bag of chips for getting up this morning and coming out on this day to learn. I am so thankful. I am Reverend Angela Williams, as she said, and I am the Associate Minister of Missional Engagement at First United Methodist Church in Dallas. I'm also the Executive Pastor at St. Paul United Methodist Church in Dallas. And I love both of these wonderful congregations who have put together a group called Justice Builders. And we work together in our community to do things such as this and to work toward justice in our community and in our world. And so I'm just so delighted to be a part of that group. I'm also delighted to be a part of the committee that pulled this event together for you. And I just want to, if you're in the house, go ahead and stand as I call your name. Part of this steering committee is Doris Marshall. She is the United Women in Faith President of Metro District of North Texas Conference of the United Methodist Church, and she is a member at First Church. Thank you, Doris. And also we have St. Paul members, Sharon Spratt. She's at the back there waving, and Carol Shaw. She's out there back greeting as well. They are part of the Justice Builders. We have Reverend Phil Dickey He's in the house back there. He's the Director of Congregational Innovation and Education Beyond the Walls at Austin Seminary. And he's also the chair of the North Texas Conference Board of Church and Society. Thank you, Phil. We have Reverend Armo Crocker. Is Armo in the building? He's probably out there working somewhere, but Armo is a commissioned pastor, co-moderator of the Social Justice Task Force at Grace Presbytery. So when you see him, give him a round of applause and pat him on his back. And last but not least, of course, we have Reverend Amy Moore here, who is a parish associate for spirituality and justice here at North Park Presbyterian Church. And so these hardworking people got this together in, I want to say just a little bit over a month, maybe, not long. And so we just thank you guys for jumping in, hearing the information, signing up, and for being here today. We also have some sponsors that I want to make recognition of. Of course, the Social Justice Task Force here at Grace Presbytery, St. Paul United Methodist Church, First Church of Dallas, Faith Commons, and the North Texas Conference Board of Church and Society of the United Methodist Church. Also, I want to thank in advance our representative, LaRonda Jackson. Is she here? It's LaRonda Jackson. She's a Dallas County representative. And we have a voter outreach coordinator, Esmeralda Garcia. And they are going to be helping us to understand how to vote, the mechanics of it all. So you will see them later in the show, in the event. It's a show. It's a showdown, all right, in Texas this year. It's a show all the way down, all right? And definitely, I want to recognize Texas Impact. Texas Impact, when I called just to try to get in contact to see if something like this would be available. And B. Moorhead called me back and she said, oh, yes, Amy is trying to do the same thing. And so she brought us together, and I really appreciate that. The work has been done, and you guys know all of what Texas Impact does, but also along with B. Moorhead here today, we have Scott Atnip, Kyle Riley, Josh Houston, David Basayo, and Kat Carbach. Are you in the building? They may be outside working. Thank you guys so much for pulling all of this together. There's Kat. Yay! Give your bow. Amen. Amen. Awesome. Well, there is a lot in store for us today, and we know that we serve a God, an entity who wants us to gain wisdom. And so this is a part of what we're doing today. And so before we start the day, I do want to just say a little prayer. So if you will bow your heads, we will go to God in prayer. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, your mercy, your grace, your peace, your power. We thank you for who you are in our lives. You have told us that if we want wisdom, we only have to ask. And so this day we are asking. We thank you that you are supplying. We give you all the honor and the glory and the praise in Jesus' name. In the name of the ones we serve, amen. We're going to bring up now our moderator. Our moderator, who is an exceptional person. I was standing right next to her, didn't know who she was, but had heard about her. Our moderator is a longtime committed and faithful community activist. She has participated in interfaith dialogue and friendship building since the early 80s, and in 2005, co-founded the Texas Muslim Women's Foundation. If you will welcome with me our moderator for today, Hen Jarrah.
I'm going to start saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most merciful, the beneficent. Welcome and thank you. First, I'm going to say, please, would you introduce yourselves, your name, and the district you are running for?
I'm Carl Sherman. I'm currently in the Texas House of Representatives.
District?
District 109 that covers Grand Prairie, Dallas, Cedar Hill, DeSoto, Lancaster, Hutchins, Wilmer, Glen Heights, Old Villa, and Seagoville.
He's also a candidate for the United States Senate in the Democratic primary. Too humble to tell you that. And my name is John Bryant. I'm a state representative from the 114th District, which is downtown, and just about everything east of Central Expressway up to Walnut Hill.
Thank you. And please use about 3.5 minutes to answer each one of the questions. How would you speak to the importance of voting in primary elections?
Well, the primary elections certainly are important for selecting who our ultimate nominee is in November. And, this is one of the, I think, parts of our democracy that perhaps could stand some improvement, but it's better than what we had in the past with some of the tough politics of Mayor Daley out of Chicago and those backroom deals where we chose who our nominee was. And that's really a joke because we didn't choose, somebody else chose. But when you have so few people participating in primaries, really the general public is not weighing in on who the best candidate is to counter the ultimate opponent in the general election. And I think that as a party, we really have to do a better job of improving the participation in the primaries so that we ensure that it is a democratic selection from a diverse pool of individuals, young, old, and in between, and all ethnicities participating.
Well, as people of faith, we can't compartmentalize our participation in society, and picking candidates is our responsibility, which, whether you're in the Republican or the Democratic primary, it's an essential part of determining who's going to win the election. Most people hold back from actual involvement in party politics. I think that's regrettable. I think it's better for regular people to be involved in party politics than just leaving it to the people that seem to have a passion for it and do it year in and year out. So I urge everyone to be involved in the nominating process, scrutinize those candidates, determine who you support, and communicate that to other people. Then contribute money to them. Participate in their campaigns as a volunteer. Work hard to win the nomination and be fully involved. Politics, a long-time friend of mine once said, politics is show business for ugly people. It's a good way of saying politics is there for everybody. I'm involved in it, and Carl's involved in it. I was just a regular kid who grew up in a Methodist church in a small town, but I was interested, as we were taught to be, in trying to make the world better, and I found my way into it that way. It's full of good people, and the caricatures of it you see in the media are not accurate. So I urge you all to participate fully in your political parties and in the party primaries.
I actually not supposed to comment. I'm a panelist, but I want to second what you are saying. I come from a third world country, and what this country offers everybody, the opportunity to voice their opinion and make their voice heard, is actually a blessing. And it does not happen in other places. And the people here in this country need really to realize when we say God shed his grace on thee. With all my heart, I hope they appreciate this opportunity. Oh. How does the primary affect a district?
Well, I think one of the biggest things, the impacts that primary has on the districts is seen really upstream in the political system. When you have gerrymandering in the political system, it's already decided that it's going to be a Republican or a Democrat likely in those districts. So it's even more important, I think, that people participate. Typically, we're looking at 18% of the voters are participating in primaries. Our high mark was about 30%. That's the high mark. So we really have to do a better job teaching civics to our young people, that this is important, that they participate in every election, because often when you couple the gerrymandering impact on elections, you're going to be dealing with the extremist as the nominee at the end, so that when you get to the general election, you've got two polar opposites in many ways, and that's not good for our democracy.
What's the question? Yeah.
How does the primary affect a district?
Well, the primary is where the candidate is chosen, the candidates are chosen. And unfortunately, gerrymandering, as Carl just said, has predetermined the general election outcome to a great extent. So if you're not involved in the primary, you're probably not going to be involved in picking the person that's going to be your representative. Just for those who may be only recently paying attention, gerrymandering is when you draw the districts in such a way that you achieve a predetermined outcome. And we have now the most severely gerrymandered districts in our state's history. I've been through 3 redistrictings in my years in public life and never seen anything like this. Computers now allow them to draw them so precisely that the hope of winning in the fall for the other party, the disadvantaged party in that process, is very, very limited. So today we have in the Texas House 86 Republicans and 64 Democrats. Most people who look outside observers who study the numbers say there are only maybe 3 or 4 swing districts. The rest of them are just so heavily gerrymandered, they're predetermined. That's not a good thing, but it's another good reason to be involved in the primary process.
What is helpful to communicate with elected officials in off legislative years as well as when it is in session?
You know, during the interim, that's an important time to get your representatives' interest and your senators, because they're not in the heat of the legislative process. For instance, last regular session, I think we've had 4 special sessions, right, John? But the last regular session, we had more bills filed than the history of the state. You know, we were looking at $32 billion surplus. I had served on appropriations, and you see all of these wish lists coming through. We had over 7,000 bills filed. None of us has the capacity to review all the merits of these bills, and we don't really, if we're transparent about it, we really don't have the staff that can review all 17 or 7,000 bills. Now, most of those bills never saw a hearing, so that's the good thing about it. But during the interim, it's your opportunity to get ahead of the legislative process and make whatever your interests are perhaps a priority to your elected official. And I would also suggest that you galvanize interest groups that may also agree with you and bring them to your representatives to discuss those issues. And you can take that time also to try and connect legislators. I would always, during the interim, meet with individuals I've identified as folks that I have some values in common. One of the problems we have in our political system today is we start at ultra values. Well, that's no place to start if you're really going to work on getting policy done. You've got to start with the core values, and that's how we were able to work with Matt Krause, the dean of the Freedom Caucus, who was considered really extreme. So I would spend my time building those relationships, getting a rapport with those elected officials, and finding groups who have the same interest.
The other, I think, aspect of that is that it's very important for members to know that there are people watching the way in which they vote, both in order to see if they vote in a way that vote like they should. Also, to know that there's going to be a reward for being courageous. A lot of these issues, that particularly the ones that Texas Impact focuses on, are controversial. And there are going to be very conservative forces that are going to penalize somebody who gets over and votes with us to try to do right in the public interest. They need to know that you're there appreciating what they do, and you're going to be involved with them and help them carry on through and fend off the critics, not only in the interim, but at election time. So the interim is a time in which you can do that. It is helter-skelter down there in the legislature once it starts. We unfortunately have an old constitution that was written for a time in which most people were involved in agriculture, and the people that owned farms and ranches traveled into Austin, met every 2 years for 5 months, and then went home. Now we have 30 million people in our state. We're a nation state. We have an economy that would be the 9th largest in the world if we were an independent country. And our system is really not adequate to meet the needs of a state of our size and economic importance. So we have to try to cram everything into 5 months. We have special sessions when the governor is in the mood to call one for a particular matter, but generally speaking, the work is completed about Memorial Day every odd numbered year. So much is going on. Just getting in to see a member and getting him to sit still for you to talk to him during that period of time is a job, because they're all serving on 2 and 3 committees, and once the House is in session, it's pretty difficult to leave the floor for a very long time. So yes, the interim is very important.
At what point do you, as a legislator, begin preparing for the legislative session, and what is involved with the preparing?
Well, preparing really takes place perpetually all the time. You don't say, okay, now it's time to get ready. You're paying attention to the issues that are of concern to you and your constituents, and you're getting legislation drafted well before the session starts and beginning to talk about the issues. Let me emphasize to you, the real issues are not obscure, and there are from time to time new things that present themselves. The real issue is, how do we spend our money? You know, that's how you determine really where the heart of the state is. And are we going to educate our kids or not? Our children, our independent school districts in Texas have not received an increase in funding in 10 years. Now, they'll say, oh, well, the budget has gone up, but all the extra money went to charter schools and other kind of sidelines. We have a society in which almost half of the people have no assets. We've seen an astonishing division with regard to wealth in the country. And I don't begrudge anybody making all the money that they want to spend their time making, But I do worry about the stability of our society when we have so many people living under so much pressure and unable to move out of the situation that they find themselves in. These are moral issues, and it's not too hard to get ready for that. You should be thinking about that all year around. So the short answer to the question is we're busy getting ready for the next session all the time.
Yeah, John's right. And, I think that scripture, right? Where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. And, for us that are really committed to the people and to shaping policy that is impactful to the average person, John and I take this very seriously. John is one of those members that I can show up at his office after hours and he's in his office. And those are the type of individuals that understand that we are perpetually preparing ourselves for the session. And a big part of that is being among the people. It's got to be a part of our daily lives. That we understand the people. Can I just say one personal story I'd like to share? I'm a senior pastor, and I've pastored for almost 17 years now, and over 6 of those years, I pastored 2 churches, one all white and the other predominantly African American. 5 sermons a Sunday, 2 on Wednesday. And the only reason the one was all white was because Michelle was not going to go to 5 different services. But what I found was our biggest issue is culture. I preached the same message, same sermon text, different analogies, different metaphors. I might reference Tim McGraw over here, or George Strait. And maybe I talk about be humble and kind. But over here, Jay-Z and Beyonce. But it was the same message, but different culture. The culture has gotten in the way of us getting things effectively done. And so a part of this preparing for the next session has to be spending time building relationships. And it can't be transactional, which is what we have by and large in the Texas Capitol and the nation's capital. Why? Because we've gerrymandered, so all we have to do is just get the votes. No one cares about, it seems, building relationships and tearing down those walls. And so I think a big part of us preparing is us getting to know the people, and more importantly, I think Scripture tells us in regards to getting to know elders and deacons and bishops in the church, that the church has a responsibility to know who is laboring among them. And so that's so important that we raise the bar as the electorate to say, I don't want to just get to know you from text messaging and emails. I want to get to know you because you show up and you engage me, and I really get to know you instead of just seeing pictures of you.
We have answered these questions, and I think I'm going to open it to any questions from the audience. But before I do that, I have a question for you. What do you tell people who tell you the policies are already set and my voice is not going to make a difference, and I really will not be casting any vote? How do you convince them to cast some votes? And in a way, I'm talking about our community, the Muslim community. We are very disheartened, and we are hearing a lot from our community people. What difference does it make? They are all the same, irrespective of which party they are. Why should we cast a vote?
Well, let me see if I can't hit the target with regard to your community right now. A number of us immediately called for a ceasefire in Gaza in the first week of this horrible massacre, which has now come to nearly 30,000 people, about half of whom were children. That was immoral, inexcusable, no possible way to justify what happened there, no matter how bad the behavior of Hamas was in the very beginning. Now, more members would have done that had they known of been aware of the presence in our electoral process of Muslim voters. Not to say that every Muslim is concerned about the Palestinians, but a lot are. Most are not aware. There is a Muslim Democratic group that meets once a month. In fact, its meeting began tomorrow in Irving. They've made themselves very active in the Democratic Party, at least in this county. I don't know what's going on around the state, but that kind of activity has a great impact. President Biden right now, who I think should have exercised all of his authority to put a quick stop to that massacre, is now quite worried about what he's going to do to Cary, Michigan, because there is a huge block of Arab and Muslim voters in Michigan, and Michigan's a key state. So the idea that people don't play a role or don't have any effect on the outcome of policy is just completely false. There may be a little bit of cultural carryover because they were perhaps used to that in another place, but here political activism does have a major impact.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. I think two things. One, I believe that Republicans and Democrats sometimes, politics, they spread a lot of negativity, which is really intended to get people not to vote, those ads that they play. And I hear a lot of people saying, I don't do politics. I don't do politics because of that very thing. They're concerned that their vote doesn't matter. And they should feel that way because that's the way the system is intended to communicate that their vote doesn't matter. And why should they believe it matters? Because sometimes Republicans and Democrats are controlled by lobbyists to have certain positions that may be marginally different in some cases. Now, that's my opinion. I've, by and large, spent my life in local politics. But for those people who say they don't do politics, I would caution them that politics does them all day, every day. Because when you have more uninsured people in Texas than anywhere else, that's politics. When we're sending $10 billion back to the federal government from hard-working Texans paying their taxes and they don't have health coverage, that's politics. When we accumulate each year $27 billion in uncompensated hospital care, that's politics. So when they say they don't do politics, politics is doing them all day and every day. And Texas Impact, when you think about the work that you do in changing lives, I can't help but think about a young man named Ethan Couch, who just came off probation, who killed 4 people, and he was given something I'd never heard of in the legal profession, affluenza, which meant he never served any time in TDCJ. He left the country, breaking and violating his probation. We spent all sorts of resources to apprehend him and bring him back to the country. only to give him affluenza again. And I have a father in my district whose son lived in Grayson County in Sherman, Texas, who didn't leave the country, he didn't leave the county, he didn't leave the city, he didn't even leave his own apartment. And he was arrested for evading the arrest. He was sentenced, John, to 50 years in prison. I just went down to the prison, which I visit our prisons. We've got 100. So that's politics. When there's justice over here that's different from over here. So we need every individual to participate in our democracy so that we can achieve the Declaration of Independence, so that everyone is treated humanly.
Thank you so much. And I know you have a plane to catch. So I am gonna give the chance to Ms. Rita to introduce herself and your district.
Yes.
I'll try to put the questions that I asked them
Sure.
consolidate them in one question.
Sure.
Maybe give few minutes to the audience to ask questions.
All right, thank you. Thank you, One. I am State Representative Retta Andrews Bowers. I represent House District 113, which covers parts of Rowlett, Garland, Mesquite, and Seagoville now. Thank you for having me today. I'm glad to join my colleagues here and to have a minute to share with you. If you will, present the questions
Sure.
so I know what I missed out on and I can try to catch up.
I'll give you the questions, and you're welcome to consolidate your answer. I have this. Thank you so much. First of all, in your opinion, what's the importance of voting in primary elections?
Wow. I'll say this. It's pretty quick for me. Voting in a primary really, even opposed or unopposed, it shows the community where community support is. And so at this point, I am unopposed on the ballot, but I still have to say, I need your vote, right? Because I need people to show up so that when we get way down the road in November, then they see where the community support is. So it's very important.
How will this primary affect your district?
How will the primary?
How will the primary affect your district?
Well, the primary, it's crowded out there, which in some regards is a good thing because people are stepping up. But one thing I have to say in any election is people have to be educated voters. Like, you cannot go into any ballot box not knowing. You can't do a eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You can't do, oh, I like that name. Oh, I just saw him out at the polls. It's a good thing for us to be out at the polls and people to stand out, rain, sleet, or snow, but you really need to go into that ballot box as an educated voter, knowing that the person that you are voting for, wherever they fall, if their values align with yours, that they're going to be an advocate for the things that matter to you.
In a way, you're answering the third question. What's helpful to communicate with elected officials in off legislative years as well as one in session?
So repeat that again.
What's helpful to communicate with elected officials in off legislative years as well as when they are in session?
Very good. Thank you for that question. I'm sure my colleagues have shared some of this, but in years we're in session and in the interim, it's always important to communicate what is on your heart, what matters to you. I give out my cell phone number. I don't know about y'all, but I certainly want a constituent, whether they're an elected official being a superintendent or not, to call my office. My district director, Lakeisha Hill, she'll wave her hand, is here with me today. And I want my superintendents, when it comes to anything education related, to call me on the floor or text me. Because literally, we're taking votes that matter to your everyday lives and your children's lives. So, I'd rather you be able to get me. There are those stressful moments when we're on the floor when I'm like, how do they have my phone number? But I literally gave it out. So I'd rather be accessible, approachable, and the servant that I am elected to be. Thank you.
Thank you. At what point do you, as a legislator, begin preparing for the legislative session? And what's involved with the preparing?
That's ongoing. I can't be here and not mention something that these guys worked long and hard with me on, and that is the Texas Crown Act. We were able to pass the Crown Act, Carl being a joint author and John for sure a co-author, and I'm so appreciative of their partnership. We were able to pass it in Texas, at a bipartisan fashion. Thank you. Because, there are not many bills that come out of the House passing at 143-5 out of the House and 29-1 in the Senate. And I'm proud of that work. So the work is ongoing. If we're in the field, if we're talking, Carl and I, whether we're working on the Crown Act or anything that is public safety related, whether it's with TDCJ and hearing from them, we're in those meetings all throughout the year. And I have to say, when it comes to the Crown Act, because the work was ongoing, even if I was at the beauty salon, you better believe that I was talking to women constantly about what it felt like to get a new hairstyle, whether that's braids, locks, or whatnot, and to not be accepted on the workplace. Talking to children constantly once we passed this legislation, sharing what the Crown Act meant about freedom and acceptance with preschoolers, from preschool to senior citizens. So it's ongoing.
Any questions from the audience? Okay, the lady in green.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Kim Spite. I'm in House District 115 with Representative Julie Johnson. And you mentioned the Bible verse, where the treasures are, your heart will be. I saw that when I went to vote in November, when it was an off-year, non-presidential election, the number of people that showed up to vote for property tax reform. However, what can we do as voters to also let voters know other issues are just as important and really relate to just as important as property tax reform, as a woman's right to choose, as school vouchers, as the Texas power grid? What can we as voters do so that others know that is just as important from a financial perspective as property tax reform?
So I'll pass it down, but one thing I can say is just what you're doing now. You're here at a forum like this, but it is about getting to know your elected officials, going ahead and making sure you know the staff, you know how to reach us, because your voices, whether you send an email, a call, as I mentioned, I do give out my cell, or send a text, is just about letting us know what matters to you. And I will say this, you mentioned your representative. When we see and we can truly know that you're our constituent, your voice is going to matter so much. So it's just about reaching out and giving your name, address, and your information so we know that, of course, those are the voices of our constituents. Thank you.
So most of you, I think the heart of your question is, how do you evangelize the importance of being civically engaged and involved? It's pretty hard, right? Because you are speaking to the choir here. We're here because we care. This is Saturday. of people they're doing other things like shopping and everything. You're here. So I would suggest that we look at innovative ways, but also, not innovative, but creative ways of trying to get them the message. Because it's sort of like being a parent, right? Michelle and I, we've got 5 kids and 8 grandkids. I can't keep preaching the same thing to them. In fact, I'm a preacher, so I can't really preach to them like that. So, but what I would say is, if you look at what we have, the tools we have, say our telephones, the average person has 460 contacts. That's the average in their phone. Text messaging one-on-one has proven effective. Don't do a group text. One-on-one. You tell them you're voting. You tell them why you're voting. You may even tell them who or what you're voting on and the importance of it. But that's going to take time because you've got to go through your Rolodex and one-on-one. People don't respond if it's a group text or even a social media post, because those individuals that will respond are the people who are in the same choir that you're in. And so that's my one suggestion.
I would also say take a little closer look at the issues. Tax reform is an issue that Texas Impact should have been involved in. I don't think he decided to work on that. I mentioned earlier the economic stress that is borne by so many of our people. 50% of the people in the city of Dallas live in households that rent their home. 38% of all Texans rent their home. And yet, in the tax reform bill that passed, which, by the way, was simply a rebate of accumulated sales tax money, which all of us pay, whether we're homeowners or renters. In the passing of that bill, no consideration was given to dealing with half of the population in Dallas and nearly 40% of it statewide. Instead, $4.5 billion in tax relief was given to refineries and to skyscrapers and other categories of property, the owners of which were not even asking for tax relief. Had that money been used only on homeowners, it would have doubled the amount of relief we gave to homeowners. Had it been used for people that are renters, it would have provided a significant break for a big part of the population that's having a difficult time getting by. So I would say don't fence off all of these issues that sound like they don't involve social justice. Any issue involving how we spend and how we tax involves social justice and is a fit topic for Texas Impact.
Any other question from the audience? Yes.
Yes. Hi, my name is Amanda Tyler, and I'm lead organizer of a national campaign called Christians Against Christian Nationalism. And we decided, thanks. We looked at the whole country and we decided we wanted to base our very first local organizing project here in North Texas. And I'm here today with Lisa Jacob, who is our field organizer for Christians Against Christian Nationalism in North Texas. And Christian nationalism, as we define it, is this political ideology that tries to merge Christian and American identities and to say to be a full member of our society, you have to be a Christian, and a particular kind of Christian that espouses fundamentalist views that are in line with conservative policies and politics. And so my question for you all is, how do you see Christian nationalism impacting politics and policy at the legislature? And what do you think an interfaith coalition of people of faith can do to try to push back against it?
I'd like to answer this because I've got to go and catch a plane to a capital for Christian nationalists, which is in Lubbock, Texas. I mean, there's just some Christian nationalists there, let me say that. Yeah, it affects our policies and the shaping of our policies. It's the biggest threat, or one of the biggest threats on shaping policy that is policy that is fair and humane. I'll give you one example. I haven't been in the Texas House long. This is just my third term. And while I have to leave, Jewel Mansay from my office, would you raise your hand? He's here, and if you need to get him, if you need to get me, he can give you my cell phone number. So I would say one of the examples was in prison reform. I could talk about police reform too, some of the things we got done there. But there was a lot of pushback when we're talking about the issue of humane conditions for people that we incarcerate. So we have 100 prisons in the state of Texas, state prisons. Most of them do not have AC in the housing units. Texas A&M has reported through their research that temperatures rise above 140 degrees. People are dying inside of our prisons in the cells. We have AC in the chapel, we have AC in the warden's office, in the library, everywhere else but where they live. 130,000 souls inside of our prisons. Now, I'm a former city manager, and I'll tell you, as by law, we have to have AC in our animal shelters. There is no animal, as much as I love animals, there's no animal that was made in the image of God, according to the Word of God. But Christian nationalists push against that and say that if you do the crime, do the time. And these are folks who worship every Sunday, and they feel that they're right on that issue, and they will fight against it, and so many other issues that deal with humanity. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Representative, before you leave, I cannot let him leave without saying that we served together our freshman term on corrections and worked on many of those issues when it came to prisons, and just bringing in that level of faith on the dais with Representative Sherman was one of the pleasures of my time of service. It seemed that though we believe in the division, if you will, of church and state, literally we would be quoting scripture on the dais and bringing that level of humanity and the Bible into our daily lives. And it was the most beautiful thing, because I think a lot of the people in the hearings were totally surprised that we were bringing it back to biblical times. But I've had people tell me, Representative Sherman, that surely, and when I say I'm Christian, right, then they look at what might be beside my name and think, surely you're smarter than that. And if you're Christian, how could you be that? And I certainly say, surely I am smarter than that. And it is because of my beliefs and my values that I know that what they might be preaching is really not what Jesus would do. And when I serve on Homeland Security and Public Safety, the Speaker's Select Committee on Community Safety, and many of those things. A lot of times I am down on the border, and literally on the border, whether that's by helicopter, by plane, or by boat on the river. And when you look at the inhumane treatment of migrants, how in the world can that be what a Christian would do? And when people are coming to our borders to seek asylum, how do you turn people away when they are seeking a better way of life? I just know that that is not what Jesus would do. And our faith, and I'm glad that Representative Sherman said the things he said, and thank you, John, I'm going to move closer to you. Thank you for even looking to me to pass the mic when it comes to weaving faith the right way into what we do, because we deal with a lot of things, whether it is, as someone said, reproductive rights, which certainly your faith comes in there, but we have to know that men should not be telling women, right, John, what to do with their body. I think you agree with me. So thank you.
That's enough.
If you would like, we've answered it. We don't have that much time. We only have less than 3 minutes. Any other question you would like to pose for our wonderful guests? Maybe one that requires a short answer.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Metlock. I live in Collin County, and you were talking about gerrymandered districts. My district is very gerrymandered. It's a long string of, we cover North Dallas, we cover all parts of Collin, all the way up to almost Anna. I live in McKinney. So I guess my question is, in a district that is that gerrymandered, and we're talking about primaries right now, what can we who disagree with some of the very radical views that are being proposed right now, what can we do to actually, in a gerrymandered district, what can we actually do to promote some of the things we're talking about? I think that right now we're feeling very stymied that we don't have enough of a grasp of people around us, given that the district is very gerrymandered.
Well, let me just try to be succinct, because I know I'm seeing the cutoff sign over here. The answer is the same with regard to every issue. You've got to be involved in the electoral process. A very small minority of our population is involved in it. You know, the voter turnout numbers, you're well aware of how low those are, and that's just the people that go and vote. A very small number of people make campaign contributions. We're now in an era where we have billionaires. We've always had rich people, but people who are multi-billionaires who are dominating the political process with their campaign contributions. I know I'm a Democrat, I'm a progressive Democrat, and I'm a loud one, I'm active. But I sit in the middle of a nest of Republicans on the House floor. That just happens by accident. You choose your seat without knowing who's going to be around you. I like these guys. I talk to them all day long. We're on the floor for red and nose, sometimes 12, 14 hours, sometimes until 3 or 4 in the morning. I like them. We talk. I make a speech. They say, good speech. Then they vote against me, vote the other way. My point being, they really don't have any choice, those guys, because of these billionaires and the way they dominate politics with their money, with their scorecards and all that. Now, a majority of the Republicans agree with those billionaires, but a significant number of them don't. And they voted with us to stop school vouchers in this last special session. So the only way to offset the billionaires, the money kings' influence, is for lots of people to get involved. I got elected right out of law school 10 days ago. It was 50 years since I was elected the first time. And I got elected without knowing so little about what I was up to, because all these people came out of nowhere and worked in my campaign and helped me get in there. Otherwise, I'd probably still be looking in the window knock, wondering how do I get involved in it. It was all because people showed up, and who said it? Somebody along the way said, the country's run by the people that show up. So show up.
Thank you, sir.
That's awesome. I only will say, because I agree totally with you, John, on people, you have to get involved. You have to find that candidate close enough to you. And you're in Collin County. You're pretty close to me. There are some of our counterparts that are there. But you do have to find somebody that is aligned with you. Get involved, whatever you can do. Donate, but dial, knock. with them and help to amplify that voice in your community. I just have to say to my colleague, I thought you picked your seat because it was close to me. Like literally we sit right across the aisle from each other, and he did say that, but he's right. We do sit in a sea of our Republican colleagues, and you know, it gives us the opportunity to talk to them. It gives us the opportunity to hear from them, maybe even try to persuade them if we have to. So
Thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And now that we have heard from representatives, and thank you for moderating, Hind, I'd like to invite up our Texas Impact folks, B. Moorhead and I think Josh Houston, for some nuts and bolts for the how-tos of our process. Thank you.
I'm talking first, that's right, okay. All right, here we go. The nuts and bolts of civic engagement. Well, thank you all for coming. We're overwhelmed at the attendance and the response that y'all have had. It's really exciting. I'm B. Moorhead, I'm the Executive Director of Texas Impact, and our job here, Scott and Josh and me, is to talk to you a little bit about what Texas Impact is. Some of you are very familiar with Texas Impact. Some of you are somewhat familiar. Raise your hand if this is the first time you ever heard of Texas Impact. All right, well, thank you especially for being here. So, Texas Impact started in 1973 as a part of the Texas Conference of Churches. There's no more Texas Conference of Churches. It's just Texas Impact now. We are the oldest, largest interfaith advocacy network in the state. We have several yes, ma'am. We have several board members here, and I want to have all of them stand up at one time. Phil Dickey, Cynthia Reeves, Kyle Walker, Amy Moore, and Nancy Caston, and also Mel Caraway, who is, you can just stay standing there. He is a past president of Texas Impact. We appreciate all of our board members and would give them a hand. We would join you in giving them a hand. Texas Impact was established to be a voice of religious social concern to the Texas legislature on what we would describe as widely shared, deeply held religious social concerns. So these are issues where our denominations and faith traditions that don't agree about everything, right? But they are things that we can agree on. We work with the denominational bodies and the other religious traditions in the state, as well as nationally, and we work with national and statewide partners that share those concerns as well. This, I'm not going to expect everyone to read it, and I'm not going to read it to you, but on our website you can find it. But these are the denominational and other institutional members of Texas Impact. Each of those bodies has board representation on the Texas Impact Board, and if you see the one you belong to and you wonder who the board members are representing you, you can find any one of our staff and we can tell you. So, many of you are familiar with this quote from the Reverend William Sloane Coffin. Charity is a matter of personal attributes, justice a matter of public policy. Charity seeks to eliminate the effects of injustice, and justice seeks to eliminate the causes of it. Charity in no way affects the status quo, while justice leads inevitably to political confrontation. So,
it's a problem, right, that in our faith communities, we've kind of made justice and charity be antagonistic toward each other. We've set them as one or the other. And in real life, let me come down here with you. In real life, justice and charity are more like two halves of a coin. So how many of you are familiar with this story of the children in the river? Yeah? So for people who are not, the children in the river is a story that we could tell in Texas. So there were two people, let's say there were two Presbyterians, and they were walking along the banks of the Rio Grande, and they saw a baby float down the river. So what did they do? They fished it out, right? And they gave it to Team Brownsville. Team Brownsville, how many people know what Team Brownsville is? Team Brownsville is a charity in Brownsville. They gave the baby to Team Brownsville, and Team Brownsville took care of it. But while that was happening, they looked again, and there was another baby that washed down the river. So this started happening more and more. And finally, one of those Presbyterians said to the other one, I'm leaving, and left. And the first Presbyterian said, where are you going? Who's going to save all the babies? And they said, I'm going to go upstream and find out who's throwing the babies in the river, right? We think about charity as fishing the babies out of the river. We think about justice as going upstream and finding out who's throwing them in the river. But the truth is, if we all go upstream and find out who's throwing the babies in the river, what's going to happen to the babies? They're all going to drown. So we need all of that to happen at the same time. So justice, when we talk about justice, we're talking about policy. We're talking about public policy. And when we're talking about policy, we're talking about issues. And issues leads us to advocacy. Texas Impact has an issue framework that's made up of 4 main components: economic justice, civic engagement, human rights, and climate justice. These are what we would describe as the core shared concerns of the faith communities. And John Bryant said he was curious if Texas Impact had worked on the issue of property tax. Texas Impact is always working on tax issues. Interestingly, Texas Impact is one of 2 organizations in the state that have a historic pro-income tax position. Do you know who the other one is? It's the League of Women Voters. League of Women Voters and Texas Impact, the 2 organizations. So we are here to engage you in the issues that you're interested in from a faith perspective that you share with each other. And it turns out that's really a lot. That's a big neighborhood. But it also turns out we can't do that without engaging you in the political process. It's not that we're partisan, and it's not that we want you to move your faith community into a partisan atmosphere. It's just that Josh is going to explain to you, and the representatives did too, politics and policy, those are like charity and justice too, right? 2 sides of the coin. We don't get to one without going through the other. So now I'm going to turn it over to Josh, and he's going to talk to you about what that looks like.
You set me up for a really... Do it? Just do it. All right, well, in Texas, we know who's throwing babies in the river, and I'm going to explain why that's happening electorally. All right, so in Texas, I'm going to need your help for this, actually. If you were able, would you stand? I want to demonstrate why babies are getting pushed back in the Rio Grande. Because it's not just happening, there's a reason for it. It's voters, those that bother to show up. You represent the 22 million Texans that are what we call the voting age population. In other words, you're 18, you are a citizen, and you are not serving a felony sentence. You could be voting in Texas. But right off the bat, I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13, 14. These rows to sit down. Everybody, 1, 2, 3 rows sit down. And then 5 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You all sit down. So 19%, 1 in 5 Texans are not registered to vote. And if you are not registered to vote, you are not voting. And you are not driving the policy conversations in the state. We are coming up on a presidential year. Presidential years have the highest turnout of any election. By high turnout, I mean 52%. So another, there was 100 people in the room. Okay, I now need these 3 rows to sit down. Well, y'all can remain standing. Well, that's close enough. We're at about 52% of the room remaining standing. So in a presidential year, I mean, 52% was a record. That was 2020. I mean, a lot of things were remarkable about the year 2020. It was the first time that a majority of the voting age population participated in any election in Texas. This is 52% of Texans voted for some presidential candidate, all of them combined. But presidential years are kind of high turnout watermarks. So we are now going to look at midterm years, or gubernatorial elections. People nationally call them midterm years because of Congress. But in Texas, it's when we elect all the statewide officials. So since y'all kind of sat down early, let's just keep it as it is, because 2018 was record turnout in Texas for a midterm year. It was 42%. 42% looks a lot like a presidential year, and that's what made 2018 remarkable. But let's talk about what it was in 2022. These 5 voters on this row represent the drop in turnout between 2018 and 2022. Let's talk about where that happened, because where it happened really determines whether or not Beto O'Rourke loses by 2.5 percentage points or loses by 11 percentage points. So there was no drop in turnout in the rural counties in Texas. The rural counties in Texas are 75-25 Republican to Democrat. Therefore, that went about the same way as it always does for the last 20 years in Texas. Suburban turnout, it's 50-50. I mean, maybe 52-48 one way one year, 52-48 another way another year. Really, they're kind of canceling each other out. So let me have y'all two sit down for suburban turnout. These 3 voters right here represent urban Texas. And when I say urban, I mean just 5 counties: Dallas, Harris, Bexar, Travis, and El Paso. Those were the 5 counties that were down in turnout 10%, and they are the inverse of rural Texas. In other words, they tend to go about 70-30 Democrat to Republican. So when these 3 voters don't show, that is the difference between Beto O'Rourke losing by 2.5 and losing by 11. Or these 3 voters right here. Y'all please sit down. So this is the 37% of the state that turned out in 2022. Good news is that turnout is up on average, because back in 2014, 2010, 2006, this number drops to 25%. So let's have this row sit down and this row sit down. So for the most part, this is who was voting in midterm years previous to kind of recent Texas history when you go back to the 2000s and 2010s. But I've only talked about November. And 95% of the Texas legislature is effectively elected in the primary. That's due to partisan gerrymandering. So let's break this down even further, because it drops to about 14%. So let me count off real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so everybody from these rows back, please sit down. This is who's electing 95% of the Texas legislature. Do what? Oh yeah, y'all sit down too. Sorry. Everybody over here. Thank you. These 14 super voters. Now, you 14 super voters, if you're able, could you come out here so we can kind of want to demonstrate a little further how this breaks down, because this is both parties combined, and it's both parties combined in a primary. And this is good in the middle here. Make sure I got the numbers right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Perfect. Okay. So let me have these voters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Y'all kind of come over here a little bit. Y'all tend to vote, y'all are the Democratic Party voters. So y'all are electing 64 seats, I believe it is currently, maybe 65, 64, in the Texas House at the moment. It was 64. So y'all 5 are electing 65 members of the Texas House. It's impressive. But all of y'all are Republicans. And let me divide y'all up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's kind of break it right here. Y'all come over here. Somehow my numbers got off a little bit. Why don't you come over here real quick? That's 4 to 4. No, I need you to come back over here, actually. Somebody moved on me or I miscounted, okay? So we'll just go with it. It'll work. Amy, it was you. That's what it was. Kathy, why don't you come on back over this way a little bit? Yeah. And then, Linda, if you step over here, because I want to make it, okay. Over there is just fine. Man, I'm losing my mind for a second there. All right, so y'all four represent the traditional wing, we'll call it. It's getting hard to figure out a name because you can't really call them moderate so much anymore. You could about, 5 or 10 years ago, but it's getting harder. So y'all represent the traditional or business wing of the Republican Party. Right now, at a statewide level, y'all are getting outvoted about 5 to 4 because y'all represent the more extremist or MAGA or what we used to call Tea Party wing of the Republican Party. Y'all tend to be winning statewide elections in this kind of ratio of 5 to 4. Now, I've only talked about the primary. I haven't talked about primary runoffs because in primary runoffs, you have to win in Texas your primary by 50% of the voters plus 1. So if I'm going to have 2 of you sit down, then I'm going to have 2 of you sit down, then I'm going to have 2 of you sit down because in a primary runoff, it drops even more. The ratio, if you're really good at math and you're head in fractions, you'll note that 2/3 is a little bit different than 4/5. That actually plays out about the same way, where if you get to a runoff, the advantage goes to the most passionate. The most passionate are not the business community right now. The most passionate are the extremist wing of the community right now. And that is why sometimes you'll see 3 or 4 candidates in a race trying to force a runoff. Okay. I want to pause real quick, though, because I want to talk about school board elections a little bit. And that's why I kept the Democrats up here, because you'll see. So in a school board election, they're nonpartisan. They don't go through a party primary. In other words, it's just candidates on the ballot. Now, in school board elections, it tends to, now having it not go through a primary, tends to favor the centrist, generally. There are exceptions to this rule, but let's talk about the general rule first. Business Republicans, could you come over here with me, please? In a school board election, the reasonable and the progressive, the centrist, whatever you want to call it, they tend to cluster together and prevail in a school board election. That's the general rule. That's part of why school boards haven't completely lost their mind. But there are some exceptions. But I want to explain why that happens. In all those exceptions where we'll call them the Christian nationalist side wins, it's usually because it's a 3-way race and these candidates split the vote. The Christian nationalists that have gained school board seats, and we've had a good chance to look at these since our advocacy on the Chaplain bill, we got about 65 districts of data. None of them win with 50% or a majority. They all win with a plurality. They win with about 40% of the vote, where the center and the progressive split 40, 30, 30, or less. That's what's happened to Grapevine, Colleyville, South Lake, any of the ones that have made the news recently here in North Texas. That's what's happened, is that you have a 3-way or 4-way race, and candidates split the vote. And so in school board elections, because school boards have to pay for the election, they often don't have runoffs, which means they take the plurality winner, whoever got the most votes total, even if it's below 50%, gets to be the school board trustee. Thing to be aware of. Now, some districts do have runoffs, some don't. Some elect them in May, some elect them in November. Some have elections in even-numbered years, some in odd-numbered years. There's a lot of local option that occurs in these races, but they're also super critical because it's school boards that implement whatever the state policy is. And when you go to actually implement the policy, you have quite a bit of discretion that you probably don't intuitively think. Okay. Let's return to primaries real quick, though. Kept y'all standing a while. Democrats, y'all can sit down. Y'all are not driving the policy conversations in Texas. Republicans, I gotta break y'all down a little bit, though. Well, actually, y'all can sit down for this. Y'all got the idea. This is what's been playing out in Texas since 2012. In 2012, Senator Cruz won a primary runoff with about 3.5% of the voting age population walking into a voting booth and saying, I want Ted Cruz. Lieutenant Governor Patrick had the same thing play out in 2014 in a primary runoff where 2.5% of the voting age population walked into a voting booth and said, I want Dan Patrick. Everyone else kind of sat it out. That's what's been driving the policy conversation in Texas. There is somewhere that there's a quote of Lieutenant Governor basically saying, these are my voters, these 2.5%. And that is the behavior of the Texas Senate is doing what those 2.5% tell it to do at the ballot box. All right, so often when I give this presentation, I get this question. Josh, are you saying I need to vote in a Republican primary? And I give the exact same answer every time. It depends. Where do you live? Also, it depends. What issues do you care about? Those are the two factors. Where do you live and what two issues do you care about? You have to know. And so I want to talk about the spreadsheet we gave you a little bit. I got the clicker in my pocket, don't I? Okay. Got to find it. Excuse me. This spreadsheet. We've broken down every Texas House race and every Texas Senate seat for you. It looks like this. It's in your folder. Because one, where do you live? If you don't know where you live, I want you to get out your cell phone and just Google the words, who represents me? You will then plug in your address and it will tell you, shockingly, who represents you. And it'll tell you in which district you live. Which district you live really matters. Why? Because let's say you live here. I think we're in Senate District 16. If not, we're a stone's throw away from it. It's the Senate district that's got a very competitive Democratic primary. In fact, I actually want to start with the Republican side real quick. Let's go back to House District 33. Let's say you live in House District 33. It is a district that is 62% Republican in November. So let's look at this thing real quick. We have given you the likely percentage. It's based on history. So it's not, history is a pretty good indicator of how people will behave in the future. Of how the districts have played out in a partisan way in November. So if you take a look at House District 33, it is a 62% Republican district. You will note that there is no check mark under, is it a contested general election? That means that there is no Democrat on the ballot, no Democrat filed to run in House District 33. Largely because it is a 62-38 district. What is a swing district you want to say? It is 10 points or less. 55-45, which is 10 percentage points or less, and that's generous. Really, as it was said earlier, there are 4 true swing districts out of 150 Texas House districts come November. If we're being super generous by that 55-45, then it's about 10. But that is an exceptional year that nobody anticipates. I think I've seen it once, and it was in 2010 where that happened, where we went from having 74 Democrats in the Texas House to 49 in that big kind of Tea Party year of 2010. So let's look at House District 33. Again, where do you live? Let's say you live in 33. There's no Democratic opponent. All right, you're going to want to ask, well, what's driving this race? Why is there a primary happening? It's worth inquiring. In that particular race, we know it's because the Republican incumbent voted against school vouchers and has drawn the ire of the governor. And this particular incumbent voted to raise the age, this is the Uvalde bill, to raise the age on the purchase of assault weapons from 18 to 21. He said quite openly on Twitter, look, if you're not old enough to buy a beer, not old enough to smoke cigarettes, why are you old enough to buy one of these weapons? He stood by it. That is a thing worth noting. That's what's driving the race. He's getting blasted for it. The governor tweeted, and called him out for that vote on the Uvalde bill. And the governor is after him because of his support for public schools and opposition to school vouchers, which of course drain money from public schools. That's what's driving that race out there. If you live in Senate District 16, just a stone's throw if we're not sitting in it already, there is a Democratic primary happening out there. You will note that it is a 64% Democratic district, so it's almost virtually certain to be a Democrat that wins that seat come November. You'll want to know, why is that primary happening? We're not sure. I'll leave it at that. But again, what issues are driving it? We're not sure. Investigate that for yourselves. Let's say you live in House District 108, so there may be some overlap. This is going to get interesting for you if you're in 108 and Senate District 16. But let's say you're in 108. It is a 55-45 district come November. It meets the definition of a swing district, one of the handful that exist in the state. So the Republican could win, the Democrat could win, so there's a Democratic primary, a Republican primary, and a general election, obviously, contest. All three are checked. Okay, you have a choice to make. It could be either. You are in a swing district in November that's in play, and therefore both primaries matter because they're both contested and anybody could be the contender. That's a tough choice to make. It is important for those of you who live in those true swing districts to do your homework and make sure you send responsible candidates from whatever party you are. You really have to look at where you live and what's on the ballot, because if you think your vote doesn't matter, I will point you to House District 2 that just had a special election this week. House District 2 is just east of here. It is in the rural parts of Exurbia, Dallas, kind of east of here, kind of in Van Zant and Greenville, Hunt County. That race was decided by 107 votes out of 13,000 people who participated. The candidate that is she is a former ISD trustee, prevailed by 107 votes over the pro-voucher candidate. The governor endorsed the voucher candidate. It sent seismic waves through Austin this week, if you didn't notice. Does your vote matter? Absolutely. 107 votes, House District 2. Scott?
Thank you, Josh. Hey, question for y'all. How many people feel like everything is going perfectly in your state government and at the federal level? Looking for hands, not seeing any yet. Okay, how many of you feel like we have significant work to do? Okay, I'm seeing a lot more. Yeah, all right, that's about everyone. Hey, spoiler friends, we're not going to change that by showing up at this event today. I appreciate that you're all here, right? This is a great crowd for a Saturday afternoon, lots of other things going on. We appreciate you being here, but the real work starts when? When we walk out these doors, right? And Josh just made a compelling case for everyone to be participating and inviting our friends to join us in these primary elections. There is a lot of work to do. How many of y'all have been feeling a little depressed about the state of things? Like when you turn on the news? How great does it feel to be with other humans who care about the same issues as you? Right? And so we just spent 3 days with United Women in Faith in Austin. And one of the things, we've got several. Spent 3 days and they thought it was so much fun, let's go see them on Saturday. But one of the things that everybody was saying was that it felt good to be in community with people who cared about the same things that they cared about. People who are working for justice, who are working for equity, who are working for a better future in Texas and throughout the world. It feels good, right? And so Texas Impact has tools for you to keep that party going when you leave here. Right? Tools to continue this work to make the change that we all recognize needs to be made here in Texas. Who's excited to do that? All right. I saw a couple of you go like this. Come on now, let's lock in a little more than that. So we have some opportunities for you that I want to make sure that we highlight today. First of all, everybody should make sure you're liking us on all of the social media feeds, Instagram, whatever we're calling Twitter now, Facebook, all of the places. Make sure that you're following us on social media. How many of y'all listen to podcasts? Cool. We've got a fun one. I'm biased, but go to your podcast feed, search for Texas Impact Weekly Witness. If y'all liked Representative Bowers, who was up here earlier, she's been on the podcast. Reverend Williams was on like 2 weeks ago. So another way for you to stay up to date on what's happening. But we want to highlight today, if you go to Texas Impact's website, and I just forgot what you click on now. What's it say now? Join a team. Go to the Action Center. You can join one of many, many teams. Okay? We have teams focused on public education. We have teams focused on reproductive health. We have teams focused on ending gun violence. Join one of those teams and you'll be connected with people who care about that issue. You'll be able to jump in on Zoom and engage in some projects specific to that issue area. Who's excited about that? Who wishes they knew when important legislation was coming before the Texas legislature and want to make some telephone calls and contact your rep? Cool, we've got a tool for you. The Rapid Response Team is one of the teams you can sign up for, and during the legislative session, we'll send an email that says, call your representative today with a script and some more information about the bills. Who would love to connect with some people in your area to continue this work? Excellent. We have legislative engagement groups and other opportunities for you to get involved. So you won't hurt my feelings if you pull your phone out now. Go to texasimpact.org. Let me see you. Yeah, I'm waiting. All right. Go to texasimpact.org and find all of this information and sign up now before you forget. If you have questions about any of it, I and the staff will be here ready to answer questions about any of these opportunities. But y'all, again, significant work to do. We don't want you doing this alone. We want you taking pictures today, posting on social media, asking your friends who wants to be a part of this journey with you, and get them looped in to participate in all of these different resources. Can we do that? Also, I'll wait because I get an email when y'all sign up for things and I'm not seeing them flow in yet, so keep that going, right? But we're around. Texas Impact has tools, resources for you. We want to be your partner in this ministry. If your congregation wants to figure out how they can get involved, you can email us, reach out. We'd love to help. What questions do you have for, lots of them. Oh, okay. I have a mic in my hand that I can walk for now.
What do the politicians think about this organization?
What do politicians think about this organization? Well, I'm going to, he walked out. I'd say we have between this event and the Houston one, 6 that are coming to speak at our event, but I'll give you the mic to answer that one.
I think politicians generally are impressed with this organization for 2 reasons. One of them, and none of the reasons, is because we have a lock on what the right faith answer is. It isn't that. It's because you all actually represent local communities, and it's because we can work with a lot of different kinds of people. We do work across the aisle. We help you figure out how to do that, and we help you represent the interest of your community in that collective, widely shared, deeply held set of issues. So I think politicians think we have integrity.
Yeah, whether they agree with us or not, we cause them a lot of heartburn.
Yeah, we cause them a lot of heartburn. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's kind of that's a big general question.
And I think they care more when members like you build that relationship with that office, right? For the representatives who are here today, right, they see that you are here at an event. They know that I had a couple of legislative engagement group members earlier say, we've met with our legislative office several times. They know who we are, right? And so Josh and B and our lobby team has a lot more credibility in the Capitol when you all show up.
He wants it back.
Yeah, I didn't like my answer. It was a good question. It made me think about it a bit. Authentic is the word. In our line of work, there's a lot of what's called astroturfing. So what that means is there's grassroots, grass tops, and then there's fake astroturf, right? And so you're about to see it with tens of millions of dollars flooding in from out of state to try to convince you that you should give up on public schools and privatize them. And we're going to have to expose that for what it is. It's astroturf. So what they think about us is that we have real, authentic people that live in community that have not given up on things like public schools that are a communal endeavor. I don't take my word for it. Go ask your state reps what they think of the organization, because I had a great call with I don't want to name names, but after UMW, we just had that. And got a call from a staffer saying, a Republican staffer who said, oh, your person's just lovely. And as a staffer, that's a dear friend of mine. I've known for 15 years. But I mean, but we get reports back, and it's because we have real, authentic people that live in the district that really do represent the thoughts and feelings of the community.
So this is really not on. Yes, it is. So this is really two questions, one for each of you, but it has to do with the people who are of voting age that don't have gray hair.
Okay.
Just saying, whether you pay for it or not. We're aware, we've talked here about, for you, what is the demographic shift in terms of voting age? When we did this same activity, how does that shift the voting pattern? The other one is when we look at issues, actions, campaigns, and teams, where is the issue of people under the age of fill in the blank and recruitment efforts to address those people that will be in charge 10 years from now?
I'm gonna take the first swing, and then I'll let Josh answer it. And here's what I want to say about young people, and I'm going to be 60 next month. So I used to be one. Thank you. Me too. It's better than the alternative, eh? I had a friend one time who said, everybody's talking about young people and how important it is that young people get involved in stuff. And what I want to say is young people is who babysit my children. And they can't even, I can't even count on them to do their dishes if they eat a snack. One day, they will be in a position of power. And when they are, they need to be ready to use it. But right now, the people with the gray hair have what percent of the money in this country? Huh? Like 86%. They are the people who are already in positions of power. Right now, it is up to people who are 60 and 70 in that range to keep the world functional so that by the time young people are ready to do our jobs, there's still a job to do.
Yeah, so it's no secret, you see it in data, that with more life experience, the more you come to the epiphany that the things that government does actually affect you. It sometimes, everybody has that journey at different speeds and different rates and whatever, but you see that in turnout, sure. I'll tell you, my favorite constituency to work with is in the summer times. We get to do, it used to be called Reach Beyond Mission, where youth groups come to the Capitol to learn about the connection, what B just talked about, they start off with charity and then they end up at the Capitol by the end of the week figuring out how public policy affects those missions and ministries of the church. And we do this, I do a very similar exercise to what I just did, but we're in a committee room. We then do a mock committee hearing with mock bills. Well, actually, were real bills at one point, but we then have the kids research the bills and come testify in a mock committee. And then the adults get to sit up on the dais and be the legislators. I am so, every year I'm kind of like, that leaves me inspired every year because they're very good at it. And they're almost better than adults. Like I have to sit through hours of actual real committees and actual adults testifying on actual real bills. Public testimony, man, it's rough to sit through. I wish it was those kids. Those kids are better at it. So don't count them out. There's a journey along the way. And I'll tell you what, as faith communities, we have an obligation to get them there. That's what Reach Beyond Mission is doing, is connecting that, making that nexus between mission, charity, and justice. Which is policy. But we have to get them there. And I'll tell you what, mainline Protestants, which I'm going to guess most of you are, we're an interfaith organization and interfaith folks in the room, but I want to talk to the mainline Protestants for a second. I've been looking at demographic stuff from the Public Religion Research Institute, and it's quite encouraging. If you look at white mainline Protestants and who goes to church, there really is kind of, we still have I haven't looked at this for about a week, so forgive me for stumbling over it, but we have young folks to replace us all along the age spectrum demographically. If you look at white evangelical Christians, they're top heavy on the 55 plus. Gen Z is not really participating once they get 18 years or older. They have a giant gap between 18 and 40 they don't have members to replace them. And so you can look at the Public Religion Research Institute. The myth, no, it's now a myth, the old story of mainline decline is a 20-year-old story. If you look at the data from 2010 to present, we are maintaining our numbers, and in fact, we're actually slightly growing in the last 5 or 6 years. So anyway, I say that to say, you have the young people in your congregations. We have to get them civically engaged, and you have the money, you have the power, bring them in.
Yeah, Josh's last point there kind of went halfway to where I want to go. We get asked this a lot. Why do the audiences at your events look older than the general population? And no, I mean, really, like, we represent congregations and we resource congregations. And, if we're talking about my church, like, I can go find some young people. But the question is, what are everybody in this room going to do when you go home to engage the young people in your life, right? How are you going to make sure your youth group or campus ministry or schools or wherever else young people gather in your community, how are you going to reach out to those folks, right? That's the homework assignment. I agree. We need to make sure young people are engaged, but I think it's your congregations who have the opportunity to engage those folks. So who's ready to do some of that work when we go home? Yes, excellent. Thank you. Do we have time? I'm looking. All right, one more question. I see. Oh, sorry, he already has the mic. You can grab me afterwards. We'll chat.
All politics is local, and that's where you begin, you know? You can get involved in your own neighborhood. Let me ask you 2 questions. No matter what party you affiliate with, what precinct are you in? Do you know? Do you know who your precinct chair is? Are you contacting that person? I love you. Well, I'm from Collin County, and I don't get credit for this because I became my precinct chair after the fact. But in the last election, our precinct changed color. And that was not because people were not involved. It's because they were. So I'm asking you to do homework. If you don't know your precinct number, you don't know your precinct chair, find out, get involved, because it starts very locally.
Preach.
I don't know if I'm on or not, but let's give Texas Impact a hand. We thank them certainly for all of the information and their organization and what they do in the state of Texas. As people were coming in, I heard several times that they need to duplicate it throughout the different states. So I'm just saying, let's do that. Right now, we're going to have a 15-minute break. So there's snacks and coffee and tea at the, I don't know what direction that is, but if you go out and make a right, you will run into that. And of course, the restrooms are over in that corner to the left. And we need everybody to be back here at 3 on the dot. And we will start up again at that time with our local officials.
Welcome back. I've been asked to get this party started, so let's get on with it. We have a little shift in our order, and our next presentation will be with Kyle Riley from Texas Impact, who is going to share with us about Ballot Ready. So get ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have y'all here. As was said, my name is Kyle Riley. I am Texas Impact's Civic Engagement and United Church of Christ Fellow, and I'm really excited to be with you all today to share this wonderful tool. So after Josh's fabulous presentation earlier about the turnout for primary elections, I'm sure you're all feeling just so energized. So based on that information, I want to go over a few things. First of all, in your folders, for those of you who were lucky enough to get one, the early bird gets the folder. We have these publications. It's called A Matter of Faith, and this is our publication with sermon starters, prayers, and litanies for explaining why voting is a matter of faith. You'll also find in your packet a publication called Politics and the Pulpit, and that is our repackaged information from the IRS to guide churches and congregations in civic engagement work. So that will help you as you try and determine where your congregation might try to get started in this endeavor. Now I want to pull your eyes to this slide here. Texas Impact as a whole has conveyed a engagement level organization of where congregations might be at in their civic engagement journey. So we've got 3 different levels. We've got congregations that have never engaged in civic engagement work. We've got congregations who consistently do some or one level of engagement. And we've got congregations who have done this work for decades. They are the pillars of civic engagement in their communities. They all fall somewhere in this matrix of resources and events that you can take part in as a congregation. Every part of this matrix shows a different resource that Texas Impact has developed. And all of our resources are available on our Voter Engagement Hub. Now, this is going to be available to you all on Texas Faith Votes or North Texas Faith Votes, wherever you're able to find us on our website. And it's tagged as the Voter Engagement Hub, and it's got all of the resources that correspond to those levels of engagement. Now, I want to make something very clear. Your community is encouraged to jump in wherever you feel called. There is not a checklist to go down of where you can or can't start getting involved in things. We're just recognizing that some congregations might be more comfortable starting out slow with things like voter registration versus jumping in the deep end of doing a candidate forum, right? So many of our resources in that Voter Engagement Hub center around the use of our partner tool, Ballot Ready. This tool comes free to you as part of Texas Impact. What is Ballot Ready? Ballot Ready is a all-in-one, one-stop shop voter information platform. Ballot Ready is fantastic for mobilizing your members, and it's fantastic for mobilizing outside of your membership. So that might be things such as direct service ministries, community outreach, neighborhood engagement, anything like that. And I want to be clear. Ballot Ready is not just a tool for those within your faith community. You can use it to connect and mobilize people around you in these primary elections that, as we've discussed, are so important. Now let's talk about how the tool works. So I invite you now to get out your phones and scan this QR code. You can also go to our website, texasimpact.org, and if you scroll all the way up to the bottom, you'll find a widget that allows you to input your address. Once you input your address, it'll take you to a Civic Center platform, and we'll go over that in just a moment. I'll give you all some time to check out this tool. I will also say, be as specific as you can when you put in your address to make sure you get the correct information. All right. Again, if you miss it, texasimpact.org, all the way at the bottom, big blue form. So this is what you should all be seeing now after you've input your address. This is our Civic Center on Ballot Ready. And it's got 6 different options here. 1, you can see who represents you, all the way down to your school board elected officials. You can also see a sample ballot. You can see polling locations. You can request a mail-in ballot. You can pledge to vote, sign your name and send yourself an email to remind you. And you can plan to vote. You can take all that information, when, where, and how, agree to it on the spot, put in your email, and it'll send you a reminder to let you know, hey, you said you were going to do this on this day at this time and place. Don't forget. Now, I know everyone in this room is an avid, civically engaged member of the community, so I'm not worried about any of you. But I am worried about those in your communities. This tool is going to help you make sure that the folks in your communities have exactly what they need to go and vote. They're going to have all the voter information that they need relevant to their community, because as living in a metroplex, it is very difficult for a single congregation to get information that applies to everyone who might be in attendance. It's very difficult, and this platform takes away that struggle. Now, one of the best things about Ballot Ready is that as a community, you can request a unique URL from Texas Impact to be able to send your folks to that widget that you all just scanned. Now, what this does is instead of sending just our information to everyone you know, we can tell that you sent them to us. And that is important. So what I'm going to ask you to do is either using the physical form, if you've got a folder, or using this QR code, fill out your information and request a unique link for your community today. And don't worry, this link will stay up on the slides as I go forward. So what do you get when you request a unique link? You get a unique QR code and you get a unique URL. And like I said, that allows us to know at Texas Impact that you as a community sent them to find out their voter information. So why should a faith community request a ballot ready code? Not only do we send you all that specific information, we make sure that you're able to connect your folks with that voter information that is specific to them in their congregation. And we can track them. So like I said, it allows us to know that you sent them to us, but most importantly, we can see what they do after you send them. So we can find out if they've checked their voter registration. We can find out if they made a plan to vote. We can find out if they checked polling locations or requested a mail-in ballot. All of the actions that you've just taken on that vote, on that Civic Center platform, have a code that we're able to see and find out what actions you've taken. And why is that important? Because we can compare your membership or the folks that you engage with to the Voter Activation Network, or VAN. And this allows us to see if someone you mobilized actually voted. You might be asking, why do I need to see if someone actually voted? Won't they tell me the truth? You would think so. But we've noticed that folks have a tendency to promise they'll go vote and not follow through. Now, to make something very clear before I go forward, no one can see how you vote, but if you voted is a matter of public record. In conjunction with Congregation Emmanuel in Houston, we made our Mobilize a Member campaign information resource on our website. Congregation Emmanuel started their EE Votes campaign several years ago, and they thought that they would just start out doing some voter registration. But they very quickly realized 99% of their congregation was registered to vote. So while their efforts were noble, they weren't doing much. And while they continue to hold voter registration on high holy holidays, they decided to take another step. They compared their membership list to the Voter Activation Network. And it turned out their membership turnout was lower than the Harris County average. And that's low for those of you who aren't aware. So they started calling folks. They encouraged them to make a plan to vote. And even when people assured them that they would turn out to vote, they were much more likely to do so when they knew someone would be checking. So, as we go forward here, I want to point out how our Ballot Ready tool can connect to our voter resource tools on our voter engagement hub. So as I said earlier, every one of our resources allows you to integrate Ballot Ready into your campaign. So you might already be doing a voter information booth. This is a great addition to that. You can print out the QR code and folks can scan that information right then and there and take it with them as they walk down the street. Or you might just put that URL in your weekly newsletter or print the QR code in a bulletin, and that can be as far as you want to go. But it's something, right? Whatever you do, we've got the tools for you. We've gone ahead and done all of the work that it's going to take to make those nice, pretty resources for you to share with your community. You can take that QR code that we'll make for you, and you can add it to any of these resources available on our voter engagement hub, such as our Ballot Ready bulletin insert, the bulletin announcement slide. We've even got door hangers that you can walk around the block putting out, making sure people have the voter information they need. Whatever it is, we're here to help. And we've got all the tools that you need for that. We've also got yard signs that we have yet to rebrand for North Texas, but we've got some examples of our Houston engagement folks. And these yard signs are sitting all around Greater Houston with their QR code pointing people directly to our Ballot Ready information. The other really important thing about requesting a Ballot Ready code from Texas Impact is that we're here to help you. You're not doing this alone. We are your technical support. We have myself, and we've also got direct connections to Ballot Ready. And so any problems that you have using the platform, we call them up. Bea and I talked to our representative 3 times before our United Women in Faith event last week, and we've got her on speed dial. So any issues we have, we're ready to resolve them. Any issues you have with the resources, we're also prepared to help with. They are meant for you to be able to use on your own, but if you've got any questions or concerns or want a new resource and need help with that, we are here. So if you've got a problem, talk to me. And that doesn't just go for this. Anything about the website, you're welcome to complain to me about as well, and I'm here to answer all of those questions. So finally, what I want you to take away from this, request a ballot-ready code for your community. Even if it's not for your congregation, request one for your friends and family, and see how many of your Facebook friends go vote this year. Or maybe you don't want them to. That's up to you. Decide where your congregation is going to jump in. Like I showed you in the beginning, there's a full matrix of activities, and it's not linear. You're welcome to do a candidate forum one year and a voter information booth the rest of it, right? It's completely customizable to you, and we're also here to help you figure out what might fit your congregation best. And lastly, I want you to check out that voter information hub. We've got all the resources there for you. We've got all of the how-to guides to getting started on those matrix activities, and we've got all the pre-made materials for you to share with your congregation. Finally, I want you all to sign up for update emails for this specific event. Like we've said, the work does not stop when you leave here today. It's just beginning. And so scanning this QR code is going to make sure that we have your information so that we can send you emails for upcoming events, any actions we want you to take afterwards, and all of those things. So thank you very much for your time, and don't forget to go vote. Thank you. I think we've got a little bit of time for... Okay, great. The slide, yes, there you go. Mm-hmm. I think it has to be turned on real quick, yeah.
So like during early voting period, we can check it and chase ballots, or is that after the election?
Oh my goodness. I'm pretty sure it's after, so it's after each election, but we have all of their voter history information. So personally, I've checked my whole family and they know exactly where I stand with their voter registration and voter history. So yeah, we're able to compare a list of names to their voter history and see whether they've gotten out to vote before, and then you can follow up after the election and we can say, okay, they've used your ballot ready information and then they also went and voted and they've never done that before.
I think this is fantastic. Can you put the big code that said request a code back up?
I sure can.
Thank you.
There it is. And like I said, if you've got a folder, there's also a physical form if you're more comfortable with that. Just bring those to me after the event. The QR code for the newsletter is not yet on the website, but there will be a link on the North Texas page by next week. But if you pre-registered, we should have your information. Just want to check that everyone who's here today is able to get information following up. Fantastic. Well, thank you all very much.
All right, and as we know, if you have any problems at all about anything, call Kyle. Thank you, Kyle. I'll be in touch. We're going to improv a little bit. Unfortunately, our county representative was at the last minute unable to attend. So I'd like to offer it up at this moment, open up the floor. We would love to hear, I think, from each other, what is working, not working, what are you doing, what are some of the issues that you face in your congregation, in your community. Did you say something, Bea?
Yeah, if I can kind of get to that. We know that a lot of you are already engaged in civic engagement activity. We know that you all don't necessarily know each other.
So what we want is for you all to get to know each other better so that Texas Impact can work with you holistically. So what we're hoping is that, we've got mics, if you guys, and I will just call on a couple of people to get the ball rolling, Phil Dickey. So if somebody can give Phil Dickey the mic, and if you can talk a little bit about what North Texas Conference, Church and Society is doing to try to build civic engagement.
Yes. So in the United Methodist Church, we have what we call the Board of Church and Society, which is kind of the advocacy justice branch of our denomination. And so, as mentioned earlier, I chair that here in North Texas. And so one thing we're working to do with Texas Impact actually is have a more official partnership. We've been a member judicatory for many a year, but we're looking to ramp up that partnership with Texas Impact. And really what we're going to do is kind of offer some pilot programs in our North Central District. So it's kind of up Denton, Carrollton, I think, just kind of north of here area. And really the reason we targeted that area was because we realized that, as has been said today, there are a lot of very red spaces and a lot of very blue spaces, and there's not a ton of purple spaces. And so the more we thought about it, the more we planned about it, we thought, let's figure out how we can try to do some movement of the needle around justice issues in spaces that really have some opportunity to actually have some movement. And so we're going to be piloting a few different congregations in our North Central District that will be working together in kind of a little bit of a cohort model, but also a little bit of just partnering very specifically with Texas Impact to not only do events like this, but then also to figure out what are those grassroots movements that are going to be taking place. And I've already heard about it today. Arapahoe United Methodist Church, which is not North Central, it's actually Metro, right, Marilee? Am I correct? Yeah. Here, hold on, because our friends online can't hear you, so can you do this?
So last year we met a few ladies from Denton First UMC, and so we have been getting together once a month since last year's legislative conference. And it has been just so nice to get to know people that live fairly close together. We don't share the same representative, but we do have the same senator, and it's just been really, really nice and very, very helpful. And so we're going to be like adding some people from Arapahoe this year, and anyone else in kind of like the Denton, Frisco, Plano, Richardson area that we just get together once a month and share.
So it's kind of the coalition building work. It's also a little bit of just grassroots work that we're working on as well. Recognizing, as was said here a minute ago, that all politics is local, right? And so we want to make sure that people who are in similar geographic areas are knowing one another and beginning to partner together to do that work together. And so is that what you were?
That is just what I was hoping for.
Thank you.
So Kyle Walker and Laura, do you guys want to talk about what Grace Presbytery is doing kind of on, okay, all right. Kyle, would you like Amy to talk about what, okay. Here.
Thank you. Grace Presbytery is doing this right now because I am speaking on what I think is behalf of the Presbytery, that we have not come together well as a collaborative force to build power in our voices, by our voices. And so it is our hope and effort to build collaboration with our other faith communities, as well as within our community, to establish the interests. We're very, it's a large geographic area, and to get that information out so that people can connect and build coalitions to gather around specific issues that are coming onto the legislative floor, to gather as a numeric voice before a legislator and their office to say, here's where we stand on this issue. I had that opportunity in the last special session with our legislator, I gathered up about 24 people, and it was by Zoom, but we were on all together with the legislative office. Not everyone spoke, but there's power in numbers. Everyone was there, their name and address was provided, and then 3 of us spoke to the legislative office and made clear our position on what they were voting on. So it takes time. I can be impatient. I like to have a whole bunch of people all together all at once. I think we did pretty good today.
Oh my God.
So this is a start, and I will say I'm super excited to have everyone here, and we are in the Grace Presbytery's in the planning and building process.
I think that's great.
So, Todd Porter, can you talk about the Lutheran Synod? Notice the person on deck is Nancy Kasten, who's going to talk about Faith Commons and the Jewish community in Dallas. So, Todd Porter from the North Texas, Northern Louisiana Synod.
Yes. Let me tell you a quick story. When George Floyd was murdered, we were outraged in the NTNL Synod Public Witness team, and so we gathered a group of theologians and lay people and wrote a statement condemning that action on the part of the state. And we circulated that to our congregations and invited them to sign on to that outrage. And they did not. And so ever since then, so we're on 4 years of working on this bit of moving towards social justice. Ever since then, we've been trying to find ways to convene conversations with people we disagree with and invite them to gather around the words and life of Jesus Christ and build from that advocacy, build from that empathy, build from that social action that leads to life on earth as it is in heaven. This is really hard, it turns out. I would imagine that's your experience too, that interacting with folks who you kind of want to disagree with at the least, like it's hard work. And so my invitation for you, this gathering, and those you know engaged in the work of advocacy and social justice, is that little piece. I want to build a coalition of conversation, a coalition of empathy, even for the people we might want to call racist. Because for those of us who look like this, it's our work to go find our cousins and to bring them into the way of Jesus that brings life to every person. So that is a piece of what we're doing in Public Witness.
All right. Is there a mic towards the back of the room for Nancy? All right.
I have it. Thank you.
Perfect.
Hi, I'm Rabbi Nancy Kasten, and I see my Jewish partners, Karen Edelstein from National Council of Jewish Women, and from Temple Emmanuel, and Deborah Levy-Fritz from Temple Shalom and from the Religious Action Center, Texas. And so from within the Jewish community, we are working on voter engagement and encouraging people to be poll workers and working with local organizations and statewide organizations to increase civic engagement in general. I work for Faith Commons, which is a multi-faith organization whose mission is to lift up faith voices in the public square for the common good. As such, we are partnering with groups like Christians Against Christian Nationalism, like Americans United for Separation of Church and State, in addition to Texas Impact, of course, and others. I hope that we will also be focusing on expanding our local efforts to South Dallas, which is also part of North Texas, but is not represented so much here today, because I think we really do need to work with our communities, and especially the communities that are most impacted by some of the policies that we want to change. So the civic engagement on those with people who, as Dr. Jura, I don't know if she's still here, was mentioning, how are we going to make sure people want, who are going to vote, that they think it's going to make a difference for people for whom neither Republicans nor Democrats have made a difference. And I think, unfortunately, we're a little bit in playing defense right now, because if we don't elect people who want to protect the humanity of all people, then things are going to get much, much worse. So we're just maybe trying to tread water until we can really develop the new leadership we need to make those differences that we want to see in the future.
And Nancy, you could go ahead and hand it right back there to Sarah Burrell-Harrop.
Hi, I'm Sarah Burrell-Harrop. I am the intern minister for the Texas Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry. And so UUs like to UU the vote, and we have been UUing the vote on a national level and a state level since 2020. And so that means engaging in our congregations to do nonpartisan get out the vote work. And so just like what Carl was saying about Emmanuel in Houston, they found that their in-parish, within their congregation, people were pretty engaged. We are wired, Unitarian Universalists, because we are very engaged on justice issues. So our kind of predicament is to convince our people to get engaged with nonpartisan work instead of partisan work. And so we're really committed to that, to doing nonpartisan, get out the vote work, engaging low propensity voters as a justice issue. These people aren't lazy. These people are not, stupid. They're disengaged because the system doesn't work for them. And so we would be really excited and proud. We're going to have a vote work, that's going to be my portfolio for 2024. And so we're really interested in getting engaged with community groups. We have some national partners as well, with activities that congregations can do, such as Reclaim Our Vote, the postcards, and Vote Forward, as well as wanting to engage with canvassing and doing things locally with our local partners. And so really, really happy to engage with anyone here. So that's it.
And a word from Hind.
First of all, I want to thank you all for including me and asking me to moderate. What I want to say is I am Hind Jarrah. I have come to this country in 1975. My parents are Palestinian. I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. This country, I always tell people, when we swear to take the oath for the citizenship, we had to prepare and read the Constitution of the United States. And when I read the Constitution, it was the closest place to what I would consider heaven on earth. What I want to say is, whatever values you have emphasized, social justice, all the 4 values that you put, we as Americans have to make sure that these values apply to all human beings. And we have to make sure that we get over our fear from the other. And we have to get over immediately judging people, whether their look, or whether by how they speak, or their language, or whatever it is. I want to ask you, I want to first give my salute to Rabbi Nancy, because she epitomizes for me the person who really and truly lives their faith and applies the teachings of their faith in what she does. And she's Jewish. I am Palestinian. I have lived the Palestinian tragedy since the time I opened my eyes. To be honest with you, I met Jewish people after September 11 because we had an interfaith dialogue at SMU, and it was Muslims, Christians, and Jews. There are so many things in my mind about Jewish people, and I bet there is also vice versa. When you get to know a person, things become totally different. Please share with the people that you talk to, with your friends, with your congregations, that we are all human beings. We all have the same blood running in us. We all crave the things, the same things. We want peace, we want security, we want a good life for our children. That's what we are here all about. And we are here on this earth for a very, very short period of time. And we all are gonna go. When we go, let's apply what the Jewish community lives for, Tikkun Ilam. Let's make this a better place than what we have left it, than when we have lived in it. And let's convince each other there is enough to go for everybody. Nobody needs to take over other people's property and homes and livelihood. The Creator is smart. The Creator gave us all a lot. All what He wants from us is to share it. And all what He wants from us is to love for others what we love for ourselves. I thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I want to warn everybody who invites me in the future, don't give me the microphone.
So the last person I want to have talk is Scott Atnip, and you're going to talk a little bit about Houston faith votes and what we're hoping to do up here. And then it turns out our person from the county, our representative from the county is here. And so after Scott talks, we're going to go ahead and move into that presentation.
So just quickly, y'all, this is the first of several events that we are doing like this over the course of the next few weeks. We're going to be in Houston 2 weeks from now doing a very similar event, Houston Faith Votes. And this is the second round of these events in the Houston area because they have a steering committee who is working on what it will take to pull congregations in the Houston area together to do this civic engagement work. And in Houston, that planning committee did a series of 3 events last fall, continued it with the event that's coming up in 2 weeks, and is continuing to build momentum in the Houston area. I love Houston. I grew up near Houston, but I feel like Dallas can kind of outdo Houston, right? So it seems to me like we ought to have a similar effort going on here in the Dallas area so Houston doesn't get all the love. Who thinks that sounds like a really good idea? Who thinks that some people you know might be interested in serving on that steering committee, that team? I didn't even say that you do it. I'd say that you know somebody. Come on now. There's got to be more than that. Hey, if you know somebody or if you're interested, come see one of us and we'll try to pull that group together over the coming weeks. But y'all, this work is important. And in order to keep it going, so it's not just a one-time event, we need a group that's continuing to push the conversation forward. So we hope some of y'all will either volunteer yourself or somebody else to be a part of that so we can keep the momentum going. This is not a short-term issue, right? We're not going to be working on this for the next couple weeks until the primary. We're not going to be working on it until November. Josh has been talking for the last few weeks about some things have taken 14 years or longer to change, right? We're in this for the long haul. So let's start the conversation today, keep it going, moving forward. Can we commit to doing that? All right. And do you want to introduce me?
Huh? You got it? Okay. So we have Jayla here from the Dallas County Elections Division, and she's going to do a presentation that'll be very nuts and bolts. If you thought ours was nuts and bolts, nothing compared to this. So, and if you would like to use the lectern, you're welcome to. If you want to use this, you can too. Okay. And who is the clicker these days? It's on the lectern. The clicker's up there.
Okay. All right. Maybe I should just stand up here.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So sorry. I'm standing in for our original presenter. So wish me luck, I guess, right? My name is Jayla. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for Dallas County Elections. So we'll run through this presentation. Any questions you have, I would be happy to answer. I've been with Dallas County Elections for a little bit over 6 months. So I started as a trainer, working with the voting machines, tabulators, e-poll books. I don't know if we have any judges or clerks in the room who work at the vote centers. Hey guys. Yeah, so I started as a trainer and then I moved over to our communications team. So we're responsible for voter education, voter registration efforts and things of that nature. So let's go through this presentation really quickly. Okay, so here's our new elections administrator, Hyder Garcia. He was the previous Tarrant County administrator. So just a little bit about Dallas County elections. We do have about 58 full-time employees and over 5,000 election workers during major elections. So this year, we have a lot of people in the office with us, right? We have, in addition to our 58 full-time employees, we probably have about 100 temporary workers or part-time workers there right now, running in and out of the office, doing various things. Most of them are allocated to hardware and logistics because that's where a lot of our efforts go. Here you see that, I think it mentions something about we spend 6 to 8 million a year annually, right? A lot of that goes to the maintenance and making sure our elections are ran smoothly. So a lot of equipment maintenance, a lot of logistics, coordinating the use of the equipment, the vote centers. We have 435 election day vote centers and 65 early voting vote centers. So it's a lot of coordination with things of that nature. Oh, what's most important, and it's bolded, we have 1.4 million registered voters. Okay, so that's pretty significant. So Tuesday, March 5th is the primary election. Is everyone registered? Do we have anyone who still needs to register? Okay, because the registration deadline is coming up on Monday. So if you need to update your registration or register, I have some voter registration cards. I'll be happy to help you with that. So again, the last day to register is February 5th. The last day to receive the ballot by mail, which we'll dive into a little bit later in this presentation, is February 23rd. And then the last day to deliver your ballot by mail in person, that's election day. So if you receive a ballot by mail in the mail and you're not able to send it by that deadline, you do have the option on election day to turn in your ballot by mail in person, as long as you make it by the deadline of 7 p.m. on election day. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is, what is it saying? 2020. Thank you. Thanks for catching that. I'm like, wait, what are we talking about? Okay, so in order to register to vote, you must be a United States citizen, you must be a resident of the county, so of Dallas County, and you must be at least 17 years and 10 months of age. In addition to that, you must not be a convicted felon, and you must not be a person determined by final judgment or court exercising probate jurisdiction to be totally mentally incapacitated or partially mentally incapacitated. That's a lot, okay? So we have a few different voting methods. Ballot by mail, that's where you complete an application if you're eligible. We'll send you a ballot through the mail and you return it to us. Then we have early voting, and then we have election day. So some of these figures are different. Like we have 65 early voting locations now. That goes through Commissioner's Court, and that's for the 2023 to 2025 year. So I don't know if any of you guys are familiar, but we have an entire committee dedicated to determining our vote centers. They're called the VSAC Committee, Vote Center Advisory Committee. And just this past year, we spent a lot of time with the members of that committee, just making sure that we fill in any gaps, make sure that everyone has accessible voting, a vote center located near them, and things of that nature. So we landed on 65 early voting locations and 463 election day locations. Now we'll go over the eligibility to vote by mail. We'll dive into the application because the application can be pretty daunting for some. And then we'll also go over how you could submit an application by mail. An application for voting by mail. So in order to vote by mail, you do have to be 65 or older by election day. And you can meet any of these requirements. You don't have to meet all of them. So I want to make that clear because sometimes people do worry about that. Or you have to have a disability. You would either be expected to give birth within 3 weeks before or after election day, or you're civilly committed under Chapter 841 and expect to be absent from the county during early voting and on election day, or you're confined in jail, okay? So this is a snippet of the actual ballot by mail application. That's where you would list your reason on why you believe you're eligible to vote by mail. Okay, so that's section 3 of the application. Now this is just a full entire screenshot of the ballot by mail application. We highlighted some important aspects of the application and kind of where most people get tripped up on, what causes question during this application process. So the first section highlighted, section 1, it's just going over kind of the rules and guidelines of voting by mail. So the applicant's name and address at which the applicant is registered to vote must be included on the application for your ballot by mail. So you must provide one of these followings: your Texas driver's license, or really anything that, what do we call it? The eligible ID requirements or the voter ID requirements. I'm losing my train of thought there. But anything to certify that, you could vote by mail. If you do not have a Texas driver's license or your Texas personal identification number, then you have to give the last 4 of your social security number. And then if you have not been issued a Texas driver's license or Texas personal identification number or social security number, you'll have the option to have that listed there. So when in doubt, they ask that you provide both your driver's license or ID number along with your social security number. So returning your ballot, you're going to receive, it's no longer a white envelope, it's actually a green envelope. So you'll receive a green envelope, you'll receive a ballot, you'll receive a secrecy envelope, and then you'll receive instructions on what to return. So there's a Dear Voter letter that the Secretary of State drafts, and it's just really going over all of what to expect, the guidelines of how to vote by mail, what's legal, what's not, things of that nature, just to kind of make the task less daunting. And once you complete everything, the only things you will return is your secrecy envelope with your ballot inside of it, the carrier envelope, which is it's that purple envelope right there, that's the bottom left, and then the green envelope that the picture is showing a white one, but it's really supposed to be green, it's been changed. So that's all you would send back. Now, on election day and during early voting, we have 3 pieces of equipment that we use. We have the electronic poll book, the express vote, and the tabulator. So the electronic poll book, it lists all of our registered voters in Dallas County. That's how they're able to check you in prior to making it to the voting machine or the ballot marking device. So this lists everyone who's registered in Dallas County and lists your information there. That's how they qualify you to vote. So then once you check in at the e-poll book, you would move on to the express vote. We have a express vote machine outside. I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to kind of test it and play around with it. You would move to the express vote. That's where you would actually mark your ballot. Once you mark your ballot, then you would go to the tabulator, and that's where you would cast your ballot. And then this is really demonstrating during early voting, we try to make the steps a little bit easier. So it's 1, 2, 3, right? It's easy as 1, 2, 3. You check in, you vote, then you cast your ballot. Or you mark your ballot, then you cast your ballot. And then let's see. So when you're voting, you are able to present, that's what I was looking for earlier, acceptable forms of identification. That did not come to me earlier, okay? So we have our list A and we have our list B. Our list A is any general ID you could think of, like a Texas driver's license, personal identification card, even a handgun license. They have the Texas election identification certificates, a U.S. military ID card, a citizenship certificate, a passport or ID document. List B they're reserved for voters who are not able to obtain a photo identification. That's a part of List A. And sometimes we have what we call provisional voters who are able to use List B documents in order to vote. And they'll just complete a reasonable impediment. Now, let's see, I think what we're showing here is, I know that on one of the questionnaires we had, it was, how do you request a demonstration or a presentation of this nature? And this is kind of what we're talking about here. In addition to voter lookup, election information, early voting locations, any press releases we publish, information on how to volunteer, or information on how to become a VDR. Do we have any VDRs here? Oh, cool. Hello. Any information like that, anything that we have available to offer, it's all stored and housed on our website, dallascountyvotes.org. Okay, you could also request event requests or presentation requests on that website as well. You would just click, you can't really make it out here, but there's a header that says getting involved, and then there's a event speaker request form. And here we go. It's just reiterating the same thing. In addition to that, we also have an email, dallascountyvotes@dallascounty.org. That's our public email. Even if you have just general questions, you could direct your questions to that email and we'll be responsive. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I would like to know what are some of the acceptable IDs or acceptable information for homeless individuals that can vote?
That's a good question. So, you know what? I don't know if I know the answer to that question. I don't want to misspeak. I would probably have to follow up with that question. I just don't want to misspeak and say. Do you have one? You'll send an email? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't want to misspeak. I know when it comes to voter registration, we had that question come up, like, how does the homeless committee or community register to vote? And you could use like any cross streets, but in terms of actually voting, that one I'm not too familiar with, so I'll have to follow up. But that's a good question. I never really thought about that. Yeah, let's see. I think I have some questions back there.
Yeah, my question is just as far as what we can do. I know I just signed up for the class to become a poll worker because I hear, because of all the attacks on our voting system and the people casting doubt on the integrity of voting system, that there are fewer people wanting to be poll workers. So I was just wondering if you had a sense of, is there a shortage of poll workers in Dallas County? Is that something that we should encourage our congregations to do?
I wouldn't say there's a shortage. Typically, with every election, we tend to have a surplus of workers, which is always great because we we prepare or we plan for the unexpected, right? So I wouldn't say there's a shortage, but the same concerns, there are concerns in terms of being a poll worker. I know in other states or other counties, threats have been made against poll workers and things of that nature. So there are concerns, but Dallas County, we haven't experienced any shortages. But in terms of getting involved, we also have our VDR program where you could become a volunteer deputy registrar and you could help, register your community. And then we also have just different outreach. If you're a part of an organization or anything of that sort, we love to partner with organizations just to get out the vote and make sure that we're covering all communities and all areas throughout Dallas County. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay.
How many people serve on your vote center advisory committee, and how are people selected or invited, or how do you determine where?
Yeah, so we have about 30 members of the committee, 30 plus members of the committee. And really how that came about, I believe initially it went through commissioner's court, and the commissioners were saying they wanted, a committee to discuss the vote centers in Dallas County. So initially we kind of had an outpour of people who expressed interest with different organizations and things of that nature. But with the new EA, Hyder Garcia, we're probably going to figure out the actual logistics of that committee, determining which members and such need to be on the committee or who's no longer active in the committee, things of that nature. But typically it's just a matter of us sending out a communication saying who is interested, what organizations are interested, and then we kind of fill through that. So are you interested in becoming a member? Mm-hmm. Possibly? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's probably over-representation of voting centers in the area where I live. Okay. I guess I'm curious about how people who have fewer centers or who things keep changing up on them, how that can be addressed by this committee, and how to reach out. So, sure, the commissioners might appoint some folks, but is that all the folks that need to be?
Yeah, and that's where the topic of reviewing that committee kind of came about, because we have a lot of organizations. We may have two. It's really supposed to be one member from an organization that represents, but it could be crowded in that aspect. So it's just something that we had to kind of fill through with the 2025 year coming about when the vote centers are up for review. And we also stream those meetings online as well. So that's how we allow the public to become of the conversation as well, or we try to. Mm-hmm.
Can you remind us if we have an issue on election day, say they say our ID isn't valid, or we have a problem at the polling, how do we contact Dallas County Elections to report that issue? So I work with a lot of trans people, and they might get pushed back on, you don't match the picture on your ID or whatever. Who should we report that to?
Okay, if you're having so I just want to make sure I understand. So you're saying when they go to check in, they're having issues and they're saying it's not an acceptable form of ID?
Yes.
Okay, but it should be a valid form of ID? Be. Okay, so you could always, I don't know if our number's on here. You could always give our office a call. I'm not good at remembering the number. It's on our website, but you could always give our office a call. Outside on the vote center, there's also posters as well that tell you how to report an incident that you may be experiencing. And that number it's available at the vote center too. And then, I don't know, in a particular situation, I guess it depends on the situation, but the judge of the vote center should also be able to assist with that matter.
Hi. Do you know the percentage of eligible Dallas County voters that are actually registered?
For 2022, the last percentage that I recall was 44%. Yeah. That's the last figure that I recall.
Hi, I just have a quick question. Being new to the area and just moving here, I participated always in my state elections, poll workers, election officers and all that. Because DMV takes so long to get an appointment, to even get a ID, to get a new ID, I know you have training, and I more or less probably wouldn't be able to participate in that kind of thing. I mean, I just want to know, would that be something I can do since primaries are March?
Yeah,
March
would it be
5th, to go through training at least to get some of the training done for this state.
So you wouldn't have been assigned to a vote center here, correct?
Right. I don't have.
So training wouldn't necessarily be accessible to you. However, I will say that we now are working on our online presence a bit more. So our training videos, they are available on like YouTube. In order for you to review. So it's not hands-on training, but it is a video just going through step by step our training process, if that's something. But you want to be able to actually attend a class unless you're assigned to a vote center.
Attend the classes.
Yeah, you want to. Yeah, not unless you're assigned. We reserve that for people who are assigned to a vote center or they're on our backup list to work for that specific election. Oh, okay. I was going to come back to the first question I had. I thought about something. Okay.
This goes back to the mail-in ballots. In the last election, an enormously large percentage were tossed out because of numbers that did not match, and people were not aware of where they had to pull those numbers. Do you know what that problem was, and can you tell us how to help avoid that?
I heard about that problem, but I'm not too familiar what the resolution was with that. I think, if I'm not, you do?
Yes, that'll help. So what we're hearing is that one of the things that they're recommending now as a solution is that when you register, you use your social security number and your driver's license number. Because what a lot of the problem is people couldn't remember which one they had used when they registered. And so then you're using a different one in a different case, and there's no match. So they're recommending now that you register with both of those so that whatever you use when you show up or that you need to check your registration with, all that information is connected. So that is a large issue that they're rectifying with recommending that you use social security and driver's license number, even though it's optional and you can technically use either or. So.
Yeah, and I think that's where that when in doubt, fill both out is coming from. Even in our recently published, we had a brief introductory to the ballot by mail process, and that's been a slogan that's been consistent since then. When in doubt, fill both out. So I believe that's yeah. And I wanted to circle back to the first question about a homeless individual voting, and you have to forgive me because I'm catching up here. But there is a form. It's a form that they would complete, basically saying, I don't have any means to obtain an identification card. And based on that form that they're certifying that information with, it would go up to our ballot board for review, and then our ballot board will make that decision to either accept the vote or go from there. They have a full process. Yes, ma'am. Okay, yeah, I'll send it there. Yes, ma'am.
Let that vote go through. Will that be listed as a provisional vote?
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, okay.
So it would be treated like a provisional ballot?
It would, yes, it would go through that same process.
Same process,
Mhm.
okay, thank you.
So I know to vote, you have to have proper ID.
Mm-hmm.
If there were individuals that are unhoused that want to register to vote with the anticipation of either moving to their own place or just being able to vote, what is the requirement for that?
So they would be able to use, like, if they don't have a permanent location just now, they're able to use like a cross street of where they're located. Maybe if they're going to a shelter, they have a shelter that they're frequently located at, they could use the shelter's address as well. So it's whatever, as long as we have a cross street of sort, then we could use that for their registration.
So thank you very much to the county and to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here, and thanks to your child for being, he did great. So your program says that the last part of this program is actually entirely up to you. It's a networking opportunity. We have two groups that we know have hoped to do some formal-ish networking. One is the North Texas Annual Conference, and one is Grace Presbytery. If you would associate yourself with either of those two bodies, if you're in the annual conference, if you can stay in here, and if you're in Grace Presbytery, if you can go where? This lounge area back here, says Amy. If you are not in either of those two bodies, you are welcome to join them nevertheless. They're, I'm sure, very welcoming. And also you could make common cause with other people who are here. And if you don't feel like you want to do any network, that is A-okay. But we hope that you will take this opportunity to get to know each other better and to discuss that question Scott was asking you about North Texas Faith Vote Steering Committee. We're not whistling Dixie. We really mean that. We expect there to be a steering committee if we're going to do this. So that will be up to y'all. Texas Impact is so happy to be here. Josh, Scott, everybody who's out there, we are so happy to be here. We love working with y'all. And we're looking forward to what comes next. So thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Amy, who is going to pray us out.
You know, I was thinking about this, that many of us are called to love our divine being with all our